When organizations choose new technologies to automate their businesses, oftentimes there's a temptation just to jump in and start deploying those new technologies. But this is a terrible idea. I'm going to talk about why here in today's video. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And when we're helping clients through their digital transformation journeys, one of the big things we do is we help them evaluate and select new software. And once we've helped them evaluate and select new software, we help them implement it. And one of the really fascinating things we noticed when organizations choose the technology is that the motivation and the morale and the excitement for the project is at an all-time high. People are really excited to just jump in and start working on this project that is surely going to improve their businesses and make their jobs easier. This is an understandable response to new technologies, but there's a step in between that organizations often forget, and that is phase zero of the implementation. In other words, there's a phase that needs to be inserted between software selection and implementation to make sure that the organization's ready. And if an organization's not ready and they don't have their ducks in a row and they don't have a blueprint for what they want to be when they grow up, chances are very high that the project is ultimately going to fail, or at the very least, the organization is going to spend way too much time, way too much money, and way too much chaos and heartache on the project. So what I want to do today is unpack this phenomenon and talk about what phase zero is, why it's so important, and what the different components of phase zero are so that you can be better prepared and make better use of your technology investments. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well. Now, another resource I want to tell you about that'll help you understand this in more detail is our phase zero checklist. You can find that on our website, scan this QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. If you're an organization going through a digital transformation or an ERP implementation, and your executive team isn't all on the same page, or they don't have a clear vision of how this project is going to support their future direction, then I would suggest you're not ready to start the project. You shouldn't be starting the project. And the reason for that is it creates a lot of headwinds that work against you as a project team. Let's just assume you have an executive team of, say, 7 people. If you start on a project and those 7 people on the executive team have 7 different opinions of what they want this project to be and what they want the organization to look like in the future, that project is destined to fail. So what we have to do is make sure that we get the executives on the same page and that we get the project and the overall direction of the project on the same page with the executives. If we don't do that, then the project will run into problems later on, and that's going to end up costing you a lot more time and money than it would have taken you just to get this right up front. So one of the first things you could do in phase zero is make sure that you have strategic alignment, that you've taken the time to really focus on and articulate what the future direction of the company is and how exactly this project will support that future direction. And I'll just give you a couple examples here. Some of the examples of decisions that need to be made and agreed upon by the executive team would be things like, what are our overall goals and objectives for this project? In other words, what are those quantifiable, measurable results we expect from the project? How much do we want to standardize our business processes? which parts of our business do we want to standardize? Which parts do we want to leave independent or decentralized? How much are we willing to change our business to fit the software versus changing the software to fit the business? These may sound like technical decisions or project management-based decisions, but these are decisions that have to be made by the executive team, or at least agreed upon by the executive team. And these aren't easy answers, by the way. There's a lot of trade-offs, a lot of pros and cons and risks to whatever decision you make, and so it takes time to work through that. But once you get alignment and you get everyone on the same page, now all of a sudden you've converted headwinds into tailwinds, and you can start your implementation. It's going to be a lot more successful. So make sure you have strategic alignment. That's one of the first steps in phase 0. One of the most common fallacies with digital transformation is that if you just pick the software and deploy the software, that will determine what your business processes are going to look like in the future. This is a very flawed assumption because today's modern technology is so flexible that there's a lot of different ways, a whole multitude of different ways that you can deploy that technology. And if you don't have a sense of what you want the technology to do, it's going to take you a lot of time making those decisions as a team while the meter's running and you're racking up time and cost and expense on the project. So it's really important that you have that sort of blueprint from a future state operating model and a future state business process perspective of what you want to look like. And I'm not suggesting here at this point that you go down to the micro level of detail of defining individual transactions and workflows and different screens you might use, because you may not know. This is new technology and there's only so much you know about the technology before you deploy it. So instead, what we need to do is start at that macro level, define what our end-to-end business processes are, what are the common business processes we might want to deploy throughout the organization. If we're an organization that's gone out and acquired through mergers and acquisitions, and we have 10 or 20 different ways of operating, we might need to take some time to decide what's that one way we're going to operate when we deploy technologies. Now, if you think about it, if we don't make those decisions up front, those decisions will take up a lot of time during implementation, and worse yet, it'll create a lot of resistance to change because now you're going to have people infighting and bickering over what that future state should be. So you want to get all that out on the table and work through that messiness early on. And again, by doing this and creating that operational blueprint, you're going to create exponentially more value and more efficiency and more cost reduction later on during your implementation than if you hadn't done that. So defining your future state business processes and operating model is a key part of phase 0. And to learn more about how to do this, how do you handle business process management within phase 0, I encourage you to check out this video on my YouTube channel that dives into business process management and how it works. You may have heard that organizational change management is one of, if not the, most important reasons why digital transformations fail. But organizations commonly don't understand what change management is, or they assume that their organization is immune to resistance to change and other change issues. Because again, when you first start a project after you've selected technologies, there's this misleading perception that everyone's excited about the project, therefore change management won't be difficult. The reality is it is going to be difficult. It's going to be a lot more difficult than you expect. In fact, I have yet to meet a CIO or any project team member anywhere in the world for any client I've ever done work with that has said change management was easier than they thought, or that they've done enough change management through the project. Every single case or every single instance, even with clients we've worked with, have said they wish they would have spent more time on change management. So the question is, well, what do we do at this point in the project? We don't know what the changes are yet. We don't know what the business processes are going to look like necessarily, at least not at the detail level. And we certainly aren't ready to start training or detailed communications or anything of that nature. What we can do is start to anticipate where the pockets of resistance are going to reside within the organization. And we also can start to assess how severe that resistance to change might be. And the way we do that is through an organizational readiness assessment, which involves 2 prongs. One is a quantitative anonymous employee survey. The other is a qualitative set of focus groups that together paint a picture of what the culture of the organization is, what some of the strengths and weaknesses of the organization are. And if you're skilled at doing this and you do this day in and day out like our team does at Third Stage, you'll know what some of those anticipated points of resistance are going to be, and you can create a change management strategy that really surgically targets those areas to proactively address those areas of resistance before they become unmanageable. Now, on the surface, if you ask employees if they're ready for change or if they're excited, chances are pretty high. Most, if not all of them, are going to say, yep, we're excited, we're ready, we understand. We don't like our current systems and our current processes, so we're craving new technologies. However, when you start to peel back the layers of the onion and you start to define how jobs are going to change and which jobs are going to have things taken away, which jobs might be automated or centralized, which spreadsheets might be taken away, all those things create resistance. And so we have to anticipate what those things are so that we can start to create a change plan around that. And that's why we want to do this organizational readiness assessment as part of phase 0. And the final thing I'll say here is that organizational change management is typically on the critical path. In other words, it's resistance to change that elongates a project plan. So if we don't know what our change strategy is and how long it's going to take for our people to change, we don't have a realistic implementation plan. So in order for us to define a realistic implementation plan, which I'm going to come back to that point here in a minute, we need to understand what the change strategy is. Now, to learn more about change management and what it is and how it works, I encourage you to dive into this video right here. It's a detailed training video that I published on my YouTube channel that dives into organizational change management and some of the different components that you should be aware of. Or if you prefer to read more about change management, you can download our guide to organizational change management by scanning this QR code right here or via the links below. Now, once we have strategic alignment, we've defined our future state business processes, we've done the organizational assessment so that we can create a change strategy. Now we need to look at what the program management strategy is. How are we, the organization, not our outside consultants, but how are we, the organization, going to manage this project in the overall program? And when I say program, I mean not just the technical project, I mean the entire program. So yes, you're going to hire software vendors and implementation technical partners that will do the technical pieces of things. But you also need to have a change management team, a process improvement team, an architecture and data and integration team. You might have multiple technologies that you're deploying, so that might mean you have multiple technology projects that you're managing. That should all feed up into an overall program that you manage and you have a strategy for. In addition to having an overall program strategy and plan, you also want to make sure you have the right governance and controls in place, the right risk mitigation measures, the things that allow you to manage the project from a business and technology and people perspective, and also allows you to manage your third-party vendors as well. Now note that I'm not suggesting that your implementation technology partner do that for you. They can't do that for you. They can manage the technical work stream, but only you are well equipped to manage that entire program, and you should have that ownership within your organization. Now, my team here at Third Stage, we commonly will help clients build out their program management capabilities and advise them along the way and really act as an extension of their program management team. But in general, you want to ultimately own that yourselves. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the difference between program management, project management, and how to structure an entire program, I encourage you to check out this video on my YouTube channel right here where I whiteboard out what a program is and how that's different from project management. Now, you may be wondering, why have we not talked about implementation planning? What's the actual implementation plan and why are we waiting this long to do it? First of all, I'll say that none of this is really sequential that I'm talking about. A lot of this will happen in parallel. But everything I've talked about so far in this video now should ultimately feed into and influence the overall implementation plan. And now that we know what the processes are going to look like and the magnitude of change with those processes and how well aligned we are as an organization, what our change strategy is, now that we know all that stuff, now we can create an implementation plan. Now you may also be wondering, well, my software vendor already gave me an implementation plan. Why would I do that now? Yes, they did give you an implementation plan as part of their proposal, most likely, but it's also highly, highly likely that it's unrealistic, doesn't have realistic assumptions, and doesn't fit your unique needs. And the other part of that is they probably just gave you a project plan for the technical work stream, not the overall program that includes the business process and the people aspects of the transformation. So for that reason, you need to take all these things we've talked about from phase 0 and use that as a way to create the overall implementation plan, which can use the software vendor's implementation plan as an input, but you've got to add a lot of stuff to that, a lot of other activities that weren't included in their plan, and a lot of new assumptions that might be more realistic for your organization. Now, my final component of phase 0 planning is the business case and the benefits realization plan. This is where you really refine and fine-tune the business value and the quantifiable business benefits you expect to get out of the project. It's where you refine the overall cost of the project because you probably didn't know what the real costs were until you went through this phase 0 exercise. And it's where you also define what the business benefits are and the benefits realization plan. So we've talked about not just business benefits to justify the investment in the project, but we want to convert that business case into a benefits realization plan that has a detailed plan of how we're going to achieve those benefits, which modules or process improvements or job changes are going to enable that business value. And that's going to allow us to do two things. One is it's going to allow us to ensure that after we deploy new technology, we go back to that benefits realization plan and look at how we're doing and how we're tracking so that we can make improvements and optimize our implementation to maximize the value we get from our investment. But even shorter term and more fundamental is that during the implementation, that business case and benefits realization plan is going to help us make a lot of decisions that we might not otherwise be able to make. In other words, if we have questions around scope or whether or not we should customize or whether or not we should increase the budget of the project, we're going to be making that decision in a vacuum if we don't have a business case and benefits realization plan to go back to say, here's the business value that we do or don't get if we do or don't invest additional funds or additional time, additional modules, et cetera. So the business case and benefits realization plan is a great way to provide sort of the guardrails for the overall project to ensure that we have that North Star to make the right decisions that are going to add the most value to our organization. So I hope this has provided you some guidance and some thoughts on how you might structure your Phase Zero initiative. I encourage you to download from our website our Phase Zero checklist, which you can find right here on this QR code or the links below. And you can also reach out to me if you'd like to brainstorm ideas, even just informally, about your project and how you might start your implementation planning process and your Phase Zero process. I'd be happy to bounce around ideas with you. You can reach out to me directly. I've included my contact information below, or you can find it right on the screen in front of you. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.